She had been in labor for 18 hours. 18 hours of agony, 18 hours of praying, 18 hours of waiting to hold her babies for the very first time. And when they finally placed those three perfect newborns in her arms, she got exactly 60 seconds of happiness.
As you can see, the evidence confirms
60
your
seconds,
position.
because that is when her husband
can't
walked through
believe
the
it.
door, not with flowers,
After all this
not with
time.
tears of joy, but with divorce papers, and his mother, and his sister filming the whole thing on her phone. They ripped her babies from her arms before she could even say goodbye.
Here
They
is
stole
the
her
evidence
childhood
file you
home
were looking
while
for.
she was distracted
I believe
by
this
fertility
concludes our
treatments.
business.
They had the police dismiss her as crazy.
Look how
They
high
thought
I
they
can
had
go.
destroyed her completely. But here is the
I'm
thing
going
they
faster
did not
than
know.
you.
Her mother, the woman everyone thought was just a simple nurse, had been hiding a secret worth $1.2 billion. And the moment Evelyn signed those divorce papers, she did not just end her marriage. She activated a weapon her mother had been building for 15 years. What happens next is a story of betrayal, billion-dollar revenge, and a mother who burned an empire to the ground to get her children back. Stay until the end, because the moment this family realizes what they have done is the moment everything changes. The fluorescent lights of Metropolitan General Hospital hummed with a cold, clinical indifference that seemed completely at odds with the miracle happening in room 412. Evelyn Carter lay in the delivery bed, her dark hair plastered to her forehead with sweat, her hospital gown soaked through, her entire body trembling with exhaustion after 18 hours of labor. But none of that mattered. Nothing in the world mattered except the three tiny bundles being cleaned and swaddled by nurses on the other side of the room. Three babies, her babies. After 5 years of negative pregnancy tests, 5 years of fertility treatments that left her body broken and her spirit crushed, 5 years of being told by her mother-in-law that she was defective and worthless, she had finally done it. Triplets. 2 girls and a boy, the doctor announced with a warm smile, pulling off his surgical gloves. All healthy, all perfect. Congratulations, Mrs. Lancaster, you did beautifully. Evelyn tried to respond, but the words caught in her throat. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she watched the nurses wrap her children in soft white blankets. She could hear them crying, 3 distinct voices announcing their arrival into the world, and the sound was the most beautiful music she had ever heard. "Can I hold them?" she whispered, her voice hoarse from hours of screaming. "Please, I need to hold them." "Of course, honey," said Gloria Santos, the night shift nurse who had been by Evelyn's side through the entire ordeal. Gloria was a broad-shouldered woman in her early 50s, with kind eyes and gentle hands that had delivered more babies than she could count. "Just give us 1 more minute to get them cleaned up." Evelyn nodded, her arms already aching with the need to cradle her children against her chest. She had waited so long for this moment. 5 years of hoping and praying and crying herself to sleep in a mansion that had never felt like home. 5 years of being made to feel like a failure by people who measured her worth in the children she could not produce. But now, finally, she had proven them wrong. The first baby was placed in her arms at exactly 9:47 in the evening. A girl with a surprising amount of dark hair and eyes that seemed to study Evelyn's face with ancient wisdom. "Hello, beautiful," Evelyn breathed, touching her daughter's tiny fingers. "Hello, my sweet girl. I am your mama. I have been waiting so long to meet you." The baby made a small sound, not quite a cry, more like an acknowledgement, and Evelyn felt her heart crack open in a way she had not known was possible. This was love, real love, the kind that did not come with conditions or expectations or cruelty disguised as concern. The second baby arrived in her other arm at 9:52, another girl, quieter than her sister, with curious eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. "And you," Evelyn said, tears flowing freely now, "you are perfect too. Both of you, all of you." At 9:58, the third baby was placed against her chest. A boy, the smallest of the 3, who had cried for exactly 10 seconds after his birth before settling into peaceful silence, as if he had already decided that the world was worth observing rather than protesting. For 60 seconds, Evelyn Carter knew what pure, transcendent happiness felt like. 60 seconds where the pain of labor faded into nothing. 60 seconds where the loneliness of the past 5 years dissolved like morning mist. 60 seconds where nothing existed except her and her children, and the overwhelming certainty that everything she had endured had been worth it for this single moment. 60 seconds. That was all she got. because at 10 o'clock on that Tuesday evening in October, the door to room 412 opened and Evelyn's husband walked in. Garrett Lancaster was 35 years old, Princeton educated, and heir to one of the oldest fortunes on the Eastern Seaboard. He had the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers, all sharp cheekbones and blue eyes and a smile that could charm anyone into anything. He was not smiling now. He was wearing the same charcoal suit he had worn to a charity dinner 3 nights ago. The same suit he had been wearing when Evelyn had called during her first contractions and heard a woman's voice answer his phone. The same suit that probably still smelled like the perfume of his mistress. He was carrying a manila envelope. Behind him stood his mother, Margaret Lancaster, dressed in Chanel despite the late hour, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun that seemed designed to emphasize the sharpness of her cheekbones and the coldness of her gray eyes. Margaret was 63 years old and had spent every one of those years perfecting the art of making other people feel small. She was smiling. That was the worst part. She was actually smiling, like she had been waiting for this moment her entire life. Behind Margaret stood Vivian, Garrett's younger sister, holding up her phone with the camera pointed directly at Evelyn's face. She was filming. Evelyn's exhausted mind struggled to process what she was seeing. Why was Vivian filming? Why did Garrett look so cold? Why was Margaret smiling like that? And why was Garrett carrying an envelope instead of flowers? Garrett, Evelyn said, her voice weak but hopeful. You came. I tried to call you, but I could not reach you. The babies are here. We have 3 babies, 2 girls and a boy. They are perfect, Garrett. They are so perfect. Garrett did not respond to any of that. He walked to the foot of her bed, looked at her with an expression she had never seen before, and dropped the manila envelope onto her chest. It landed on the hospital gown still stained with blood and sweat, the sharp corner scraping against her collarbone. Sign it, Garrett said. His voice was flat, businesslike, cold as a January morning. Now, I am done with you. The words did not make sense. Evelyn stared at her husband, waiting for him to smile, to laugh, to tell her this was some kind of terrible joke. But his face remained impassive, his blue eyes empty of any warmth or recognition of what she had just been through. What? She whispered. Margaret stepped forward, her heels clicking against the hospital floor with a sound like a countdown timer. She reached into her designer purse, pulled out a silver pen, and placed it in Evelyn's trembling hand. Do not make this dramatic, dear, Margaret said, her voice smooth as silk and twice as cold. You have served your purpose. You have given us what we needed. Now sign the papers and disappear quietly. It is the least you can do after everything we have given you. Evelyn looked down at the envelope on her chest. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip it, but she managed to pull out the documents inside. Divorce papers. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The words swam before her eyes, blurring together until she could barely read them. But certain phrases jumped out at her like knives. Full custody of any children born during the marriage to be awarded to the Lancaster family. Petitioner waives all claims to marital assets, property, and financial support. Petitioner agrees to have no contact with minor children without express written permission of the custodial parent. They were taking everything. Her marriage, her home, her money, and most devastating of all, her children. No, Evelyn breathed. No, this cannot be real. Garrett, please, we just had babies. Our babies, you cannot do this. Gloria Santos, who had been standing frozen by the wall since the Lancasters entered, finally found her voice. Excuse me, she said, stepping forward with her shoulders squared. This woman just gave birth. She has been in labor for 18 hours. This is completely inappropriate, and I am going to have to ask you to leave. Margaret turned to look at Gloria with the kind of expression one might use when examining a particularly unpleasant insect. This is family business, Margaret said coldly. It does not concern you. I am her nurse. Her welfare absolutely concerns me. And I am telling you that serving divorce papers to a woman who is still recovering from childbirth is not only cruel, it may not even be legally binding given her current state. Margaret's smile did not waver. We will see how long you keep that job, she said quietly. I sit on the board of this hospital. I could have you terminated with a single phone call. Is that what you want? Over some woman you have known for less than a day? Gloria's jaw tightened, but she did not back down. Evelyn felt a surge of gratitude for this stranger who was willing to fight for her when no one else would. But she also knew it was hopeless. The Lancasters owned this city. They owned the police, the judges, the politicians, and apparently the hospital too. One nurse, no matter how brave, could not stand against that kind of power. Gloria, Evelyn said quietly, it is okay. Thank you, but it is okay. Gloria looked at her with eyes full of helpless fury, but she stepped back. Garrett, Evelyn tried again, her voice cracking. Please, can we at least talk about this? I do not understand what is happening. What did I do wrong? Garrett sighed like she was being tedious. What did you do wrong? He shook his head slowly. You existed, Evelyn. That is what you did wrong. You were a placeholder, a means to an end. My mother found you because you were moldable, controllable, a nice enough family background, no money to make you independent, grateful enough to stay quiet and do what you were told. You were never supposed to be permanent. The words hit her like physical blows, each one driving the air from her lungs. But you said you loved me, she whispered. I said a lot of things. Garrett's voice held no emotion at all. I told you what you needed to hear to get what we needed from you. And now we have it. He gestured toward the babies, who were still in their bassinets, blissfully unaware of the destruction happening around them. 3 healthy heirs. Our family line is secured. Your services are no longer required. Evelyn felt something shatter inside her chest. Not her heart. Her heart had been breaking slowly for years, cracked by 1,000 small cruelties until it was more scar tissue than anything else. This was something deeper, something fundamental. This was the last remnant of hope she had been clinging to. The tiny, stubborn belief that somewhere inside the cold stranger her husband had become, there was still the man who had swept her off her feet at a charity gala 6 years ago. The man who had looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. The man who had promised to love and protect her until death did them part. That man had never existed. She had been in love with a performance. What about the children? Evelyn asked him, her voice steadier now, hardened by the realization that she had nothing left to lose. They are my children, too. You cannot just take them from me. Margaret laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound that echoed off the hospital walls. Oh, but we can, dear. She pulled another document from her purse and held it up for Evelyn to see. Do you remember the prenuptial agreement you signed before the wedding? The one Garrett's lawyers presented to you as a simple formality? Evelyn remembered. She had been 26 years old, desperately in love, certain that divorce would never be relevant to her fairy tale marriage. The document had been 50 pages of legal jargon that she had barely glanced at before signing. You should have read it more carefully, Margaret continued. There is a clause buried in Section 14 that gives the Lancaster family full custody of any children born during the marriage in the event of divorce. Full custody, Evelyn. No visitation rights. No contact. Nothing. That cannot be legal, Evelyn protested weakly. A prenup cannot take away a mother's parental rights. It can if the mother agrees to it. And you did agree. Your signature is right there on page 37. Evelyn felt the room spinning around her. I did not know. I did not understand what I was signing. Ignorance is not a defense, dear. Margaret's smile was triumphant. You signed the document of your own free will. No one forced you. No one coerced you. You simply trusted the wrong people. And now you will face the consequences of that trust. Vivian lowered her phone just long enough to lean in close to Evelyn's ear. For what it is worth, she whispered. I told them you would never last. 5 years is longer than I expected. But hey, at least you got to hold them once, right? That is more than some women get. She straightened up and resumed filming, her perfectly made-up face arranged in an expression of mock sympathy. Evelyn looked at her children. Emma, Sophia, James. Those were the names she had chosen in secret, never daring to share them with the family who would have immediately rejected anything she suggested. 3 perfect babies, just beginning their lives, completely unaware that they were about to be stolen from their mother. She thought about fighting, she thought about screaming, about refusing to sign, about making such a scene that the hospital would have to intervene. But then Margaret spoke again, and Evelyn realized just how thoroughly she had been trapped. Sign quietly, Margaret said, her voice reasonable now, almost kind, and we will let you leave with your dignity intact. You can start over somewhere else. Build a new life. Pretend none of this ever happened. And if I refuse? If you refuse, we will have you committed to Greenbrier Psychiatric Hospital for postpartum psychosis. The paperwork is already prepared. Dr. Harrison is a personal friend of mine. He will sign whatever I ask him to sign. You will spend the next several months in a padded room, drugged into compliance, while we raise your children to forget you ever existed. Margaret paused to let that sink in. Either way, you will never see those babies again. The only difference is how much suffering you want to endure in the process. Evelyn looked at Gloria, who was standing with her fists clenched at her sides, tears streaming down her face. She looked at her babies, so small and innocent, so undeserving of the family they had been born into. She looked at the pen in her hand and the papers on her chest, and the husband who had never really been her husband at all. And she made a decision. Not the decision Margaret expected, not the broken, defeated surrender of a woman who had been crushed beyond repair. Evelyn made a different decision, a secret decision, a decision that would take 6 months to execute and would require every ounce of strength she had left. She decided that she was going to destroy them, all of them. But not today. Today, she was bleeding and exhausted and completely powerless. Today, she needed to survive. She needed to get out of this room and out of this hospital and somewhere safe where she could think clearly. So she picked up the pen with a hand that had stopped trembling, and she signed her name on the dotted line. The moment the ink dried, Margaret reached down and ripped the wedding ring from Evelyn's finger. "This belongs to the family," Margaret said, holding the diamond up to the fluorescent light like a trophy she had won. Garrett took the papers, checked the signature, folded them neatly, and placed them in his jacket pocket. "Have your things out of the house by the end of the week," he said, without looking at her. "Anything you leave behind will be donated to charity." Then he turned and walked out of the room. Margaret followed him, pausing at the door just long enough to deliver one final blow. "Your mother would be so disappointed in you," she said softly. "What a waste of potential." Then she was gone. Vivian stopped filming and gave Evelyn a little wave. "Bye-bye, sister-in-law. It was fun while it lasted." She bounced out of the room like she was leaving a party instead of a crime scene. And then, worst of all, the nanny appeared, a severe-looking woman in a gray uniform who Evelyn had never seen before. She walked to the bassinets, unlocked the wheels, and began pushing them toward the door. "Wait!" Evelyn cried out, struggling to sit up despite the pain. "Please, let me hold them one more time. Just once, please." The nanny did not even look at her. "Mrs. Lancaster's orders," she said flatly. No contact, and just like that, Evelyn's children were wheeled out of the room. She never got to say goodbye. Gloria sat down on the edge of the bed and took Evelyn's hand. "I am so sorry," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "In 30 years of nursing, I have never seen anything like that. I did not know people could be so cruel." Evelyn stared at the ceiling, feeling nothing. The shock had wrapped around her like a protective blanket, numbing everything, holding back the tsunami of grief that would eventually come crashing down. "They planned this," she said quietly. "They have probably been planning it for years. They just needed me to give them children first." "What are you going to do?" Evelyn did not know how to answer that question. She had no money, no home, no family, no friends that Margaret had not already driven away with carefully placed rumors and social manipulation. She had nothing, except she was still alive. She was still breathing, and somewhere deep inside the hollow shell of the woman she had become, there was still a spark of the person she used to be, the fighter her mother had raised, the woman who had worked her way through nursing school while caring for a dying parent, the girl who had never backed down from a challenge. "I do not know yet," Evelyn said slowly, "but I am going to figure it out." Gloria squeezed her hand. "You are stronger than you know, honey. I could see it the moment you came in. You are a fighter. You just forgot for a while." Evelyn looked at this stranger who had shown her more kindness in 18 hours than her own husband had shown in 5 years. "Thank you, Gloria, for everything." Gloria pulled a business card from her pocket and pressed it into Evelyn's palm. "This is my personal number. If you need anything, anything at all, you call me. I mean it." Evelyn tucked the card into her hospital gown, close to her heart. She did not know it yet, but that small act of kindness would eventually help bring down an empire. To understand how Evelyn Carter ended up signing divorce papers in a hospital bed, you have to understand the woman she was before the Lancasters broke her. Evelyn Marie Carter was born 32 years ago in a small house on Maple Street, on the wrong side of a city divided by money and privilege. Her father had left before she was born, and her mother, Helen Carter, had raised her alone on a nurse's salary in sheer determination. Helen Carter was not a soft woman. She had calloused hands from years of hard work, a sharp tongue that could cut through nonsense like a surgical blade, and eyes that saw through every lie and excuse her daughter ever tried to tell. But she was also the most loving person Evelyn had ever known. "You are going to be somebody, baby girl," Helen used to say when Evelyn came home crying about the rich kids at school who made fun of her secondhand clothes. "Those people, they have money. But money does not make you smart or kind or strong. You have things inside you that no amount of money can buy, and one day you are going to show them all." Evelyn had believed her mother. She had worked hard in school, earned scholarships to college, and followed in Helen's footsteps to become a nurse. She had graduated at the top of her class and gotten a job at the best hospital in the city. She had been proud of herself. She had been confident and ambitious and ready to take on the world. And then she met Garrett Lancaster. It happened at a charity gala 6 years ago. Evelyn was there as a volunteer, helping to serve appetizers to people whose jewelry cost more than her annual salary. She had been uncomfortable all night, painfully aware that she did not belong in this world of crystal chandeliers and designer gowns. Then a man had appeared at her elbow, handsome and charming and completely out of her league. "You look like you would rather be anywhere else," he had said with a smile that crinkled the corners of his blue eyes. "Is it that obvious?" He had laughed, a warm sound that made something flutter in her chest. "Only to someone who feels the same way. I am Garrett, by the way." "Evelyn? Well, Evelyn," he had said, offering her his arm, "what do you say we escape this circus and find somewhere quiet to talk?" She should have said no. She should have remembered that men like Garrett Lancaster did not fall for women like her. She should have listened to the voice in her head that warned her this was too good to be true. But she had been young, she had been lonely, and he had been so very charming. So she had taken his arm and let him lead her out to the terrace, where they had talked for hours under the stars. He had asked about her work, her dreams, her life. He had listened like every word she said was fascinating. He had looked at her like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. By the time the gala ended, Evelyn was already half in love with him. The courtship was a whirlwind. Flowers delivered to the hospital every day for a month. Romantic dinners at restaurants she could never have afforded. Weekend trips to places she had only seen in magazines. Garrett was attentive and thoughtful and seemed genuinely interested in who she was as a person. He asked about her childhood, her mother, her hopes for the future. He shared his own dreams of breaking free from his family's expectations and building something meaningful with his life. He made her feel special, valued, loved. He made her feel like she had finally found her person. 6 months after they met, he proposed with a ring that probably cost more than the house she grew up in. Evelyn had said yes without hesitation, crying tears of joy, believing with all her heart that she had found her happily ever after. Her mother had been less enthusiastic. "I do not trust him," Helen had said the night Evelyn showed her the ring. "His family has money. Old money. That kind of wealth changes people, baby girl. It makes them think they can do anything they want without consequences." "You do not even know him, Mama. I know his type. I have seen them at the hospital. They treat nurses like servants. They think the rules do not apply to them. They take what they want and throw away what they do not need anymore." "Garrett is not like that," Evelyn had insisted. "He loves me. He is different." Helen had looked at her daughter with sad eyes. "I hope you are right, baby girl. I really do. But promise me something. Promise me you will always remember who you are. No matter what happens, no matter how much money surrounds you, remember that you are Evelyn Carter. You are strong and smart and capable of anything. Do not let anyone make you forget that," Evelyn had promised. And then, slowly, over the course of 5 years, she had broken that promise completely. Helen Carter died of cancer 8 months before the wedding. It happened quickly. One day she was fine, the next day she was coughing blood, and 3 months later, she was gone. Evelyn had taken a leave of absence from work to care for her mother in those final weeks, holding her hand as she slipped away, promising to make her proud. The loss had devastated Evelyn. Helen had been her anchor, her compass, her source of strength. Without her, Evelyn felt adrift in a world that suddenly seemed much colder and more dangerous. Garrett had been supportive during those dark months. He had held her while she cried, attended the funeral, helped her sort through her mother's belongings. He had seemed like the perfect partner, solid and dependable, and committed to helping her through her grief. Looking back, Evelyn realized that her mother's death had been the beginning of the end, because Helen Carter had been the only person who saw through Garrett's charm, the only person who might have warned Evelyn about what was coming, the only person who would have fought for her when the Lancasters started their campaign to erase her identity. With Helen gone, Evelyn had no one to protect her, and the Lancasters had taken full advantage. The wedding was beautiful and expensive and completely controlled by Margaret Lancaster. Evelyn had wanted a small ceremony, maybe in the garden of the house on Maple Street, where she had grown up. Margaret had insisted on a cathedral wedding with 400 guests, most of whom Evelyn had never met. Evelyn had wanted to wear her mother's simple wedding dress. Margaret had presented her with a designer gown that cost $50,000 and made her look like she was drowning in fabric and expectations. Evelyn had wanted to write her own vows. Margaret had provided a script that had been used by Lancaster brides for 3 generations. "This is how things are done in our family," Margaret had said with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "I am sure you understand." Evelyn had not understood, but she had been too overwhelmed by grief and too blinded by love to fight back. So she had worn the dress and recited the script and walked down the aisle of a church she had never attended toward a future she could not imagine. And when the priest pronounced them husband and wife, Evelyn had genuinely believed she was beginning the happiest chapter of her life. She had no idea she was walking into a prison. The first year of marriage was bearable. Garrett was still charming, still attentive, still playing the role of devoted husband. They lived in a guest house on the Lancaster estate, which Margaret explained was temporary until they found a place of their own. They attended family dinners and charity functions and social events where Evelyn smiled until her face hurt and tried desperately to fit in with people who looked at her like she was a stain on the family name. But there were warning signs, even then. Margaret's constant criticism of everything Evelyn did, the way she dressed, the way she spoke, the way she held her fork at dinner. Nothing was ever good enough. Nothing ever met the Lancaster standard. Garrett's habit of taking his mother's side in every disagreement, no matter how small. He would tell Evelyn she was being too sensitive, that his mother meant well, that she just needed to try harder to fit in. The slow erosion of Evelyn's independence, so gradual she barely noticed it happening. First, she stopped seeing her friends from work, because there was always a family event that took priority. Then she stopped visiting the house on Maple Street, because Margaret said it was depressing to dwell on the past. Then she stopped going to the hospital, because Lancaster wives did not work. By the end of year 1, Evelyn barely recognized herself. Year 2 was when Margaret's control became absolute. "A Lancaster wife does not work," Margaret announced at a family dinner, as casually as if she were commenting on the weather. "It reflects poorly on the family. People will think we cannot provide for you." "But I love nursing," Evelyn protested, looking at Garrett for support. "I work so hard for my career. I am good at what I do." Garrett did not look up from his plate. "Mother has a point," he said quietly. "It does look strange. Maybe you could do volunteer work instead." Evelyn felt something crack inside her chest. She looked around the table at the faces of her new family. Margaret, smiling with satisfaction. Richard, Garrett's father, not even pretending to pay attention. Vivian, smirking like she had just won some kind of game. And Garrett, the man who had promised to love and honor and cherish her, who was choosing his mother over his wife without even a moment of hesitation. "I will think about it," Evelyn said softly, but she already knew the outcome. She already knew she would give in, because that was what she did now. That was who she had become. 2 weeks later, she submitted her resignation to the hospital. 2 months after that, she let her nursing license lapse. "Mama," she thought as she watched her career disappear, "I am so sorry. I promised to remember who I was. But I think I am starting to forget." Year 3 brought the pregnancy pressure. "You have been married for 2 years now," Margaret said over tea one afternoon. "It is time to start thinking about children." "We are trying," Evelyn said, feeling her cheeks flush with embarrassment. "These things take time." Margaret's eyes narrowed. Time is a luxury we do not have. The Lancaster family needs heirs. Your primary duty as Garrett's wife is to provide them. Everything else is secondary. She made it sound so clinical, so transactional, like Evelyn was not a person but a breeding machine whose value depended entirely on her ability to produce offspring. Margaret scheduled monthly fertility consultations without asking Evelyn's permission. She hired specialists and ordered tests and discussed Evelyn's reproductive system at family dinners like it was a matter of public concern. "Any news?" she would ask every month, her eyes sharp with expectation. And every month, Evelyn would have to shake her head and feel the weight of another failure pressing down on her shoulders. "I am doing everything the doctors suggest," Evelyn said once, her voice trembling with frustration. "I am taking the vitamins and following the diet and timing everything perfectly. I do not know what else you want me to do." Margaret had looked at her with something like pity. "I want you to succeed, dear, because if you cannot give us children, I am afraid there is really no point in keeping you around." Year 4 was when Garrett stopped pretending. The late nights at the office started, the business trips that lasted longer than they should, the lipstick on his collar that was not Evelyn's shade, the perfume that clung to his clothes when he finally came home. Evelyn knew what was happening. She was not stupid, but she was trapped, and she was broken, and she had nowhere else to go. She tried to talk to him about it once. "Is there someone else?" she asked, her voice steady despite the trembling in her chest. Garrett had looked at her with such contempt that she had physically stepped backward. "Maybe if you were more interesting," he said, "I would want to come home." The cruelty of it had stolen her breath, but instead of fighting back, instead of demanding respect, instead of walking out the door and never looking back, Evelyn had apologized. "I am sorry," she had whispered. "I will try harder." And she had hated herself for it. Year 5 was open warfare. Margaret stopped pretending to be civil. She criticized everything about Evelyn, from her hair to her clothes to the way she breathed too loudly at dinner. She made comments about fertile women and barren wombs and the importance of knowing when you have failed. Vivian joined in, delighted to have a target for her own insecurities. She posted pictures on social media of happy families with lots of children, tagging Evelyn with captions like "goals and maybe someday." Richard ignored Evelyn completely, as if she had ceased to exist, and Garrett moved into a separate bedroom, citing her restlessness and neediness and constant disappointment as reasons he could no longer share a bed with her. Evelyn existed as a ghost in her own home. She ate meals alone. She attended events alone. She cried alone in the bathroom of the mansion that had become her prison. She thought about leaving. She thought about it every single day. But where would she go? She had no money of her own, no job, no family, no friends. The Lancasters had systematically dismantled every support system she had ever had, leaving her completely dependent on people who despised her. She was trapped, and she had begun to believe the things they said about her, that she was worthless, that she was broken, that she deserved the cruelty because she had failed at the one thing that mattered. Then in the 5th year of her marriage, Evelyn discovered she was pregnant. She had stared at the 2 pink lines on the test, her hands shaking, her heart pounding, feeling something she had not felt in years. Hope. Maybe this would change everything. Maybe Garrett would love her again. Maybe Margaret would finally accept her. Maybe she would have a reason to keep living. She had been so naive. She had not realized that the pregnancy was not a new beginning. It was the end game. The Lancasters had been waiting for this. They had kept her around, kept her around, tolerated her presence, endured her existence for 5 years, all for one reason and one reason only. They needed her to produce heirs, and the moment she fulfilled that purpose, they had no further use for her. 24 hours after signing the divorce papers, Evelyn Carter was discharged from Metropolitan General Hospital with nothing but the clothes on her back and $47 in cash that Gloria Santos had pressed into her palm. The discharge nurse had looked at her with barely concealed pity. "Is there someone we can call for you, Mrs. Lancaster? A family member? A friend?" "It is Carter," Evelyn said quietly. "My name is Carter now." And no, there is no one. She walked out of the hospital into a gray October morning, the cold wind cutting through her thin jacket like a reminder that she was completely alone in the world. She had no phone. The device she had used for 5 years had been on the Lancaster family plan, and it had been deactivated within minutes of Garrett filing the divorce papers. She had no credit cards. They were all in her married name, and every single one had been canceled or frozen. She had no wallet. It had disappeared somewhere in the chaos of labor and divorce, probably taken by the same people who had taken everything else. She had Gloria's phone number, written on a business card tucked into her bra. She had $47, and she had the address of her childhood home, the small house on Maple Street that her mother had left her in her will. That was all she had in the entire world. Evelyn used some of her precious cash to take a taxi to Maple Street. The neighborhood looked the same as she remembered. Modest houses with small yards, children playing on sidewalks, working-class families living working-class lives. It was not glamorous or impressive, but it was real in a way the Lancaster estate had never been. She felt a flicker of something almost like hope as the taxi turned onto her street. This house was hers. Helen Carter had left it to her free and clear, no mortgage, no liens, just a simple deed transferring ownership from mother to daughter. The Lancasters could take everything else, but they could not take this. This was her safety net, her fresh start, her chance to rebuild. The taxi pulled up in front of number 47, and the hope in Evelyn's chest turned to ice. There was a padlock on the front door. A sign in the window read, "Property of Lancaster Holdings, LLC." "No," Evelyn whispered. She threw money at the driver and stumbled out of the car, running up the walkway she had walked 1,000 times as a child. She grabbed the padlock and yanked on it, her hands scraping against the metal until they bled. "This is my house," she screamed to no one. "My mother left me this house." The padlock did not care about inheritance or justice or the desperate woman bleeding on the doorstep. It just hung there, cold and implacable, sealing off the last piece of home Evelyn had left. She sank to the ground, her back against the door, and for the first time since the hospital room, she let herself cry. Later, she would learn what had happened. 18 months ago, while Evelyn was distracted by fertility treatments in the slow death of her marriage, the Lancasters had used a shell company to purchase her childhood home. The sale had been legitimate because Evelyn had unknowingly signed the paperwork during one of Margaret's many document sessions. "Sign here, dear. It is just estate planning." Evelyn had signed without reading, trusting her mother-in-law the way she had trusted everyone in that family. And now she was homeless. She found a payphone outside a convenience store 3 blocks away and called 911. "I need to report a kidnapping," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "My children were taken from me at Metropolitan General Hospital last night. 3 newborns. The people who took them are named Lancaster." The dispatcher was polite but skeptical. "Ma'am, can you give me more details? Who specifically took the children?" "Their father, my ex-husband, and his mother. They served me divorce papers while I was still in the delivery bed, and then they took my babies." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Ma'am, if this is a custody dispute, that's a civil matter. You would need to contact a family court attorney." "It is not a custody dispute. It is kidnapping. I did not consent to giving up my children. I was coerced into signing papers while I was still recovering from childbirth. This is not legal. I understand you are upset, ma'am. I am going to send an officer to take your statement. Can you give me your location?" 2 police officers arrived 15 minutes later. Officer Daniels was a heavy-set man in his late 40s with a thick mustache and the kind of eyes that had stopped seeing women as people a long time ago. His partner, Officer Mitchell, was younger and female, and she at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "So let me get this straight," Officer Daniels said, looking Evelyn up and down with barely concealed contempt. "You are claiming that the Lancaster family kidnapped your children?" "Yes. From the hospital last night. They forced me to sign divorce papers, and then they took my babies." "The Lancaster family?" "Our family," Officer Daniels repeated, "as in Richard and Margaret Lancaster? The people who funded the new wing of the police station?" Evelyn felt her heart sink. "Yes." Officer Daniels exchanged a look with his partner. "Ma'am, I am going to need you to calm down." "I am calm. I am telling you that my children were taken from me against my will." "The Lancasters are respected members of this community," Officer Daniels said slowly, like he was explaining something to a child. Are you sure you are not confused? Having some postpartum issues? I am not having postpartum issues. I am telling you that a crime was committed. Officer Mitchell spoke up, her voice gentle. Maybe you should talk to someone. A professional. Get some rest. You have been through a lot. I do not need rest. I need my children. But the officers were already backing away, their body language making it clear that this conversation was over. We will file a report, Officer Daniel said. But I would strongly suggest you get a lawyer if you want to pursue this further. This sounds like a civil matter to us. They left without taking any notes. They did not file a report. Evelyn would check later. There was no record of her call, no documentation of her complaint. Nothing to prove that she had ever tried to get help. The system was not broken. It was working exactly as designed. For people with money and power. She had neither. Night fell on the city, and Evelyn found herself at the downtown bus station. She had walked for hours trying to figure out what to do next. She had no phone to call for help, no credit card to rent a hotel room, no friends who had not been poisoned against her by Lancaster whispers and social manipulation. She had $47 and nowhere to go. The bus station was warm, at least. There were plastic benches where she could sit without being harassed. There were vending machines with food she could afford. There were routes posted on the wall leading to other cities, other states, other loves. Philadelphia, Boston, Chicago, Denver. She could buy a ticket. She could pick a direction and start over somewhere the Lancasters had never heard of. She could create a new identity, find a new job, build a new life from the ashes of the old one. But her children were here. Emma, Sophia, James. She had named them in secret during the long months of pregnancy when she had been the only one who cared about them as individuals rather than as Lancaster heirs. She had whispered those names to her belly late at night, promising them that she would love them no matter what, that she would protect them no matter what. Could she really abandon them now? Could she really get on a bus and ride away, knowing that her babies were being raised by monsters? She was still wrestling with that impossible question when Gloria's phone rang. Evelyn stared at it. She had forgotten she still had it, tucked into the pocket of her jacket along with the business card Gloria had given her. She had not given anyone this number. No one even knew she had it. The caller ID said Marcus Webb, ESQ. She answered. Evelyn Carter? The voice on the other end was male, professional, and slightly urgent. My name is Marcus Webb. I was your mother's attorney. I have been trying to reach you for 2 days. My mother has been dead for 2 years, Evelyn said, her voice flat with exhaustion. She did not leave much of an estate. There was a pause on the other end of the line. That is what you were led to believe, Marcus said slowly. But there are things about your mother that you do not know, Evelyn. Things she wanted you to learn when the time was right. What are you talking about? I cannot explain over the phone. I need you to come to my office tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. Can you do that? Evelyn almost laughed. I have nowhere to sleep tonight. I have $47. I do not even have identification. There is a hotel on 5th Street, Marcus said without hesitation. The Riverside Inn. Go there and ask for room 12. The bill is already paid. There will be clothes waiting for you and a meal. Get some rest, Evelyn. Tomorrow is going to change your life. The line went dead before she could ask any more questions. Evelyn stared at the phone in her hand, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Her mother had been a nurse, a hardworking, middle-class nurse who had struggled to pay the mortgage and put food on the table. Helen Carter had driven a 10-year-old Honda and bought clothes from thrift stores and clipped coupons from the Sunday paper. What could she possibly have left Evelyn that required a mysterious lawyer and a prepaid hotel room? But Evelyn was too exhausted to question it further. She had been awake for nearly 40 hours. Her body was still recovering from childbirth, and someone, for reasons she did not understand, was offering her a warm bed and a hot meal. She walked to the Riverside Inn on 5th Street. It was a modest establishment, neither fancy nor shabby, the kind of place business travelers stayed when they wanted something clean and anonymous. The desk clerk looked up when Evelyn entered, took in her disheveled appearance, and nodded like he had been expecting her. Room 12, he said, sliding a key card across the counter. Everything has been arranged. Who arranged it? Pushao. The clerk's face remained professionally blank. I was not given that information, ma'am, but the gentleman who called said to tell you that your mother loved you very much. The room was simple but clean. A queen bed with white sheets, a desk with a lamp, a bathroom with fluffy towels and tiny bottles of shampoo. On the bed sat a shopping bag containing clothes in Evelyn's size. Jeans, a sweater, underwear, sneakers, everything she would need to face whatever tomorrow was going to bring. On the desk sat a tray covered with a silver dome. When Evelyn lifted it, she found a hot meal, chicken and vegetables and bread and a small bottle of wine. Real food, not vending machine snacks. And on the pillow sat a note handwritten on expensive paper. Your mother loved you more than you know. Sleep well. Tomorrow you fight back. The note was unsigned. Evelyn stood in the middle of the room, holding the note in her trembling hands, and felt something shift inside her chest. Someone was watching out for her. Someone her mother had trusted enough to leave instructions for this exact moment. Someone who believed that Evelyn Carter was capable of fighting back. She did not know who that someone was yet. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time since the hospital room, she felt something other than despair. She felt the tiniest spark of hope. She ate the food without tasting it. She showered without feeling the water. She put on the clean clothes and climbed into the clean bed. And for the first time in 5 years, she fell asleep without anyone telling her when to wake up. Marcus Webb's office occupied the entire 14th floor of a glass tower in the financial district. Evelyn arrived at exactly 9 in the morning wearing the clothes that had been left for her, feeling like an imposter in a world she did not understand. The lobby was all marble and chrome, and important-looking people in expensive suits, rushing past her without a second glance. The elevator rose smoothly, silently, and deposited her in a reception area that smelled like leather and old money. Ms. Carter, a young woman with a warm smile, rose from behind a mahogany desk. Mr. Webb is expecting you. Right this way. She led Evelyn down a hallway lined with law degrees and photographs of Marcus Webb shaking hands with various important-looking people. The corner office at the end had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Marcus Webb himself was a man in his late 50s with gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and the kind of face that had seen too much of the world's cruelty to be surprised by anything. He stood when Evelyn entered and gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. Please sit. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? Answers, Evelyn said, taking the seat. I would like answers. Marcus nodded slowly as if he had expected nothing less. You will have them. But I need you to prepare yourself, Evelyn. What I am about to tell you is going to change everything you thought you knew about your mother and about yourself. He started at the beginning. Your mother came to me 15 years ago, Marcus said, opening a thick folder on his desk. She had just completed the sale of her company for $800 million. Evelyn blinked. I am sorry, what? Her company, Hayes Medical Supply. She founded it 23 years before that, built it from nothing, and sold it to a multinational corporation for $800 million. My mother was a nurse, Evelyn said slowly, as if explaining something to a confused child. She worked at St. Vincent's Hospital for 30 years. She barely had enough money to keep the lights on. That is what she wanted everyone to believe. Marcus pulled out a document and slid it across the desk. Your mother was brilliant, Evelyn. When she was working those night shifts at the hospital, she noticed inefficiencies in the medical supply chain. Equipment that cost too much, supplies that were wasted, systems that could be improved. So she did something about it. She started a company. She started a company. In her spare time, while raising you alone, while working full-time, she built a business from the ground up. She found investors who believed in her vision. She hired people to run the day-to-day operations. She made strategic decisions that turned a small medical supply company into a major player in the industry. Evelyn shook her head. That is impossible. I would have known. I lived with her for 18 years. I would have noticed if she was running some kind of secret business empire. Would you? Marcus asked gently. Your mother was very careful. She used a different name for business purposes. She kept the company headquarters in a different city. She structured everything through holding companies and trusts to keep her name out of public records. She wanted to protect you, Evelyn. She was terrified that if people knew about the money, it would change you. Or worse, it would attract the wrong kind of people. Evelyn thought about Garrett Lancaster, charming and attentive, sweeping her off her feet at a charity gala. The wrong kind of people. So she hid it, Evelyn said slowly. All those years, she hid it from everyone. Everyone, including you. She sold the company 3 years before she died, $800 million. She invested it carefully, watched it grow. By the time she passed away, her net worth was over $1 billion. The $1 billion. The number was so absurd, so impossibly large, that Evelyn's brain refused to process it. That cannot be right, she whispered. It is right. And all of it, every single penny, was left to you. Marcus pulled out another document, this one thicker and more official looking. This is the Helen Carter Family Trust. Your mother established it 2 years before her death, when she first learned about the cancer. She put everything into it. Real estate holdings, stock portfolios, the original sale proceeds grown through careful investment. As of this morning, the trust is valued at $1.2 billion. Billion, Evelyn repeated. With a B, why did she not tell me? Evelyn asked, tears streaming down her face. Why did she let me struggle all those years? Why did she let me marry Garrett without warning me about what I was getting into? Marcus's expression was gentle. She wanted to tell you. She almost told you 100 times. But she was afraid, Evelyn. Afraid that the money would change your relationship. Afraid that you would feel differently about her if you knew she had been keeping secrets. And she was especially afraid of what would happen if the wrong people found out. The wrong people, Evelyn repeated. The Lancasters. Marcus leaned back in his chair and took off his glasses, polishing them slowly with a cloth from his desk drawer. Your mother knew about them, he said quietly. From the very beginning. When you announced your engagement, she did her research. She found out things about that family that terrified her. What kind of things? Financial crimes mostly, tax evasion, fraud, charity embezzlement. The Lancaster fortune is not as clean as they want everyone to believe, Margaret especially. She has been skimming from the foundation for decades. Why did she not tell me? She tried. Do you remember about a month before the wedding when she asked you to meet her for lunch? Evelyn thought back. She did remember. Helen had been unusually serious that day, almost nervous. She had started to say something several times but kept stopping herself. She said she wanted to talk about something important, Evelyn said slowly. But then she changed her mind. She said it could wait. She lost her nerve, Marcus confirmed. She told me later that she looked at your face so happy, so in love, and she could not bring herself to destroy that. She thought maybe she was wrong about the Lancasters. Maybe they would surprise her. Maybe everything would work out. But it did not. No, it did not. Marcus stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city spread below. When she realized how bad things had gotten, she came to me. This was about 6 months before she died. She said she could see what they were doing to you, but you were not ready to hear it. You would have thought she was trying to sabotage your marriage. She was right, Evelyn admitted quietly. I would have defended Garrett. I would have taken his side. Your mother knew that, so she did the only thing she could. She created a safety net, a weapon really for you to use when you finally woke up to the truth. What kind of weapon? The trust has conditions, Marcus explained. Your mother wanted to make sure the money could not be stolen from you. She wanted to make sure you could not be manipulated into giving it away. So she set up 3 activation triggers, which are you reaching age 35, or the death of your spouse, or divorce from your current spouse. Evelyn went very still. Divorce. The papers you signed in that hospital room, Marcus said, turning to face her, they were not just the end of your marriage, Evelyn. They were the beginning of your inheritance. The moment your signature hit that page, the trust activated. By the time Garrett's car left the hospital parking lot, you were legally a billionaire. He did not know, Evelyn whispered. He had no idea. None of them did. Your mother kept this secret from everyone, specifically because she knew a family like the Lancasters would never let go of that kind of money. If they had known you were an heiress, they never would have divorced you. They would have found another way to control you, another way to access your fortune. But they did not know, so they threw me away. They thought they were throwing away garbage, Marcus said with a grim smile. They had no idea they were throwing away gold. Evelyn sat in silence for a long moment, trying to process everything she had just learned. Her mother had been a secret billionaire. Her mother had known about the Lancasters. Her mother had created a trap, waiting for the exact moment when Evelyn would need it most. And Garrett, in his arrogance and cruelty, had walked right into it. "What happens now?" Evelyn asked finally. "Now you have choices," Marcus said. "You can take this money and disappear. Start over somewhere the Lancasters will never find you. Build a new life and try to forget any of this ever happened. Or, or you can fight. You can use these resources to take back your children and destroy the people who tried to destroy you." "How?" "The Lancasters have committed crimes, Evelyn. Real crimes with real evidence. Your mother gathered some of it before she died. There is more out there. If we can compile enough evidence, we can bring them down. Criminal charges, asset freezes, prison time, and most importantly, we can use their criminal behavior as grounds to overturn that prenuptial agreement and restore your parental rights." "How long would that take?" "6 months," Marcus said. "Maybe less if we are lucky. Maybe more if they fight back hard. 6 months without my children. I know. I will not pretend it is an easy choice." Evelyn thought about her babies. Emma, Sophia, James, sleeping in expensive cribs right now, being fed by nannies who would never love them the way she did. Growing older every day, learning to recognize faces that were not hers. 6 months of their lives. 6 months of milestones she would miss. 6 months of Margaret whispering poison in their ears about the mother who abandoned them. It was an unbearable thought, but the alternative was worse. If she went after the Lancasters now with nothing but righteous anger and $1 billion, they would bury her in lawyers and delays and countersuits. They would drag the custody battle out for years, decades even. They would turn her children against her so thoroughly that even if she won, she would lose. She needed to be smart. She needed to be patient. She needed to destroy their ability to fight before they even knew the war had begun. 6 months, Evelyn said quietly. "I know it is a long time." Evelyn looked up, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that made him straighten in his chair. She was not broken anymore. She was not the frightened, gaslit woman who had signed divorce papers in a hospital bed. She was something new, something forged in the fire of betrayal and loss. She was dangerous. "Tell me everything," Evelyn said. "Tell me everything my mother gathered on the Lancasters. Tell me where to find more. Tell me exactly how to bring them down." Marcus Webb smiled, with pleasure. The next 2 months were a masterclass in reinvention. Evelyn moved into a small apartment in a working-class neighborhood on the other side of the city. She paid cash, used her maiden name, and told no one except Marcus where she was living. To the Lancasters, she had simply vanished, disappeared into thin air, exactly as they had wanted. But she had not vanished. She had just gone underground. The first thing she did was get her nursing license reinstated. It had lapsed during her years as a Lancaster wife, but the credentials were still valid. She studied for 2 weeks, took the required exams, and passed with flying colors. By the end of month 1, she was legally qualified to work as a registered nurse again. The second thing she did was get a job. Not just any job, a night shift position at Metropolitan General Hospital, the same hospital where the Lancaster Foundation board members received their medical care, the same hospital where Margaret sat on the board of directors, the same hospital where evidence of their crimes was hidden in filing cabinets and billing systems. It was a risk. If anyone recognized her, if word got back to the Lancasters that she was working there, everything would fall apart. But it was also an opportunity she could not pass up. So she changed her appearance, cut her hair short and dyed it a different color, started wearing glasses she did not need, kept her head down and her mouth shut, and became invisible in the way that night shift workers often were. She was just another nurse, just another body filling a slot on the schedule. No one gave her a second glance. The evidence started coming almost immediately. Evelyn had suspected that the Lancaster Foundation was involved in Medicare fraud. She had seen suspicious invoices once, years ago, when she accidentally wandered into Margaret's home office. Margaret had been furious, screaming at her to get out, and Evelyn had never understood why. Now she did. The billing records were a mess of fictitious services and inflated charges, procedures that never happened, medications that were never administered, physical therapy sessions for patients who could not walk. Evelyn photographed everything. Late at night, when the hospital was quiet, she would access the billing system and document each fraudulent charge. She sent the images to Marcus through encrypted channels, building a case piece by piece. But she needed more than documents. She needed people. Gloria Santos was her first recruit. They met at a coffee shop 3 weeks into Evelyn's new job. Gloria had been surprised to hear from her, even more surprised to learn that Evelyn had not fled the city as everyone assumed. "You want me to testify against the Lancasters?" Gloria asked, her eyes wide. "Honey, they will destroy me. I have a mortgage. I have a daughter in college. I cannot afford to lose my job." "I understand," Evelyn said, "and I am not asking you to do anything yet. I am just asking you to keep your eyes open. If you see something, document it. When the time comes, you will have protection." "What kind of protection?" "The kind that comes with money. A lot of money." Gloria studied her for a long moment. "You are different," she said finally. "Something changed. Everything changed," Evelyn replied. "I remembered who I am." Gloria nodded slowly. "Okay, I will help, but you have to promise me something." "Name it. Promise me you will make them pay for what they did to you in that hospital room. For all the other women they have probably, let's say, done it to. Promise me you will not stop until they have lost everything." Evelyn looked her directly in the eyes. "I promise." Over the next several weeks, Gloria quietly recruited other nurses who had witnessed suspicious activity at the hospital. Women who had seen billing codes changed after the fact. Women who had been pressured to falsify records. Women who had been fired for asking too many questions. They were scared, all of them. The Lancaster name carried weight in this city, and no one wanted to be crushed beneath it. But they were also angry. They had seen too much. They had stayed silent for too long. And now someone was finally offering them a chance to fight back. By the end of month 2, Evelyn had a network of 12 potential witnesses. The second ally came from a different source entirely. Diane Fletcher was an investigative journalist who had been circling the Lancaster family for years. She had written articles questioning the foundation's finances, suggesting improprieties in their business dealings, hinting at corruption in their political connections. But she had never been able to prove anything. The Lancasters were too powerful, too connected, too good at covering their tracks. Every lead she followed turned into a dead end. Every source she cultivated was either bought off or scared into silence. Evelyn found her through a series of old newspaper articles, carefully archived online. She arranged a meeting at a coffee shop on the other side of the city, far from anywhere the Lancasters might have eyes. Diane was a weathered woman in her mid-40s with sharp eyes and the kind of exhausted determination that came from fighting battles she knew she might never win. "Who are you?" Diane asked, sliding into the booth across from Evelyn. "Someone they underestimated." Evelyn slid a folder across the table. Diane opened it. Her eyes widened. "How did you get this? Does it matter?" Diane looked up, studying Evelyn's face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "What do you want?" "I want to destroy them," Evelyn said simply, "and I want you to help me." By the end of month 3, the pieces were falling into place. Evelyn had hospital fraud evidence from Gloria and the nurses. She had financial documents from county records offices that Marcus had accessed through legal channels. She had interviews with former Lancaster employees who had been fired for various reasons and were willing to talk. But she was missing something crucial. She was missing someone who had been inside the family itself, someone who had seen how the Lancasters operated behind closed doors, someone who could testify to their character, their methods, their willingness to destroy anyone who got in their way. She needed Claire. The email arrived at 3 in the morning. Evelyn was in her apartment, reviewing financial documents that Marcus had sent her, when her computer chimed with a new message. The sender was anonymous. The subject line was blank. The message contained only an address and a time. She should have ignored it. She should have assumed it was a trap, some Lancaster scheme to smoke her out of hiding. She should have been smarter than this. But something told her to go. The meeting place was a small coffee shop in a neighborhood Evelyn did not recognize. She arrived 15 minutes early and sat in a corner booth with her back to the wall, watching the door. At exactly 3 in the afternoon, Claire Ashford walked in. She looked different from the photographs Evelyn had found during her research. Thinner, darker circles under her eyes. Her pregnant belly was visible now, probably 7 or 8 months along. She looked like a woman who had not slept well in a very long time. Claire slid into the booth across from Evelyn and sat there in silence for a long moment, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she had not ordered. "You must hate me," she said finally. Evelyn considered the question. "I did," she said. "For a while, I used to lie awake at night thinking about you, imagining what you looked like, what you sounded like, what you had that I did not. I convinced myself you were a monster, that you had stolen my husband and destroyed my marriage." Claire flinched but did not look away. "And now I understand that you were never the problem," Evelyn said. "Garrett was the problem. His family was the problem. You were just another victim." "I was not a victim," Claire said bitterly. "I was a willing participant. I knew he was married. I knew he was lying to me. I told myself it did not matter because he promised we would be together. Because I wanted to believe someone could love me." Evelyn recognized that desperation. She had felt it herself once upon a time. "What changed?" she asked. Claire's hand moved to her belly, protective, unconscious. "He told me to get rid of it," she said quietly. "When I told him I was pregnant, he said I should handle it the same way he handled you. He meant I should make it disappear. When I refused, he said his mother would find a solution." Evelyn went cold. "What does that mean?" "It means I started recording our conversations," Claire said. "Because I finally understood that I was never going to be his wife. I was never going to be anything but a problem to be solved. And I needed insurance." She pulled out her phone and slid it across the table. 6 weeks of recordings, Claire said. Garrett discussing how to move assets offshore before the divorce is final. Margaret explaining how to falsify charity records. Richard bragging about owning judges in family court. Everything you need to destroy them. Evelyn picked up the phone and scrolled through the files. There were dozens of recordings, hours of conversations, evidence that would corroborate everything she had gathered from other sources and more. "Why are you giving me this?" she asked. "Because I have a daughter," Claire said. Her voice cracked slightly. "Lily. She is 4 years old. Her father left us with nothing, and I have spent the last 3 years trying to give her a better life. I thought Garrett was the answer. I thought he would take care of us. I was wrong." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "I am not stupid enough to think I can win against them," she said. "They would crush me like they crushed you. But you are different. You have resources. You have a plan. You have something to fight for that goes beyond money or revenge." "What do I have?" "Your children." They sat in silence for a moment. Two women who should have been enemies, united by the common experience of being used and discarded by the same man. "There is something I need you to understand," Evelyn said finally. "This is not going to be easy. When I bring down the Lancasters, there will be collateral damage. Your relationship with Garrett will be exposed publicly. People will judge you." "Let them judge," Claire said. "I have been judged my whole life. For being a single mother. For not having enough money. For making choices I am not proud of. I am tired of caring what people think. I just want my daughter to be safe. I want her to grow up in a world where the Lancasters cannot hurt anyone anymore. And the baby?" Claire's hand moved to her belly again. "This baby will never know its father," she said quietly. "That is my gift to it, a clean start. A life free from Lancaster poison." Evelyn nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. "Then we have a deal." That night, alone in her apartment, Evelyn listened to every recording on Claire's phone. She heard Garrett discussing offshore accounts and shell companies. She heard Margaret explaining which documents to alter and which to destroy completely. She heard Richard laughing about the police and the judges and all the people whose loyalty could be purchased. And she heard one conversation in particular that made her blood run cold. It was from 3 months ago, recorded the day after Evelyn had signed the divorce papers. "She is gone," Garrett had said, his voice satisfied. "Signed everything without reading it. My mother was right. She was too stupid to fight back." "Did you feel anything?" Claire had asked, watching her sign. Garrett had laughed. "Relief," he said. "Pure relief. 5 years of pretending to care about someone who was never going to be enough. It is finally over." Evelyn played that recording 3 times. Then she deleted the anger from her heart and replaced it with something colder. Determination. By the end of month 4, Evelyn had everything she needed. The hospital fraud evidence from Gloria and the nurses was comprehensive and damning. Claire's recordings corroborated the financial crimes and revealed the extent of Lancaster corruption. Testimony from 12 former employees painted a picture of a family that operated above the law. Marcus had connected with a federal prosecutor named Sarah Collins, one of the few officials in the city who was not on the Lancaster payroll. Sarah had been trying to build a case against the family for years, but had never had enough evidence. Now she did. "This is extraordinary," Sarah said, reviewing the files Evelyn had compiled over months of careful work. Tax evasion, fraud, embezzlement, obstruction of justice. "We have enough here for multiple felony charges against every member of that family." "What about the prenuptial agreement?" Evelyn asked. "Can we overturn it?" Sarah nodded. "If we can prove that the Lancasters were engaged in criminal activity at the time the agreement was signed, we can argue that the contract itself was fraudulent. That means the custody clause would be void. Your parental rights would be restored." Evelyn felt hope surge in her chest. "When can we move?" "Soon. I need to present this to the grand jury for indictment. That takes time, maybe 2 weeks. But once we have the indictments, we can arrest them all simultaneously, freeze their assets, serve you with emergency custody papers. By the time they know what hit them, it will be too late." Evelyn filed for emergency custody through Marcus. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. She would present her evidence of Lancaster criminal activity and argue that her children were in danger. If the judge agreed, she could have her babies back within days. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine holding them again. Emma, Sophia, James, 6 months old now. Probably sitting up on their own, making baby sounds, developing personalities she had never gotten to know. She would know them now. She would make up for every moment she had missed. The night before the custody hearing, Evelyn went to bed feeling something she had not felt since before the hospital room. Peace, Marmu. She woke to the sound of her front door being kicked in. It happened so fast she barely had time to react. One moment she was sleeping, the next moment there were flashlights in her eyes and rough hands grabbing her arms and a voice shouting at her to get on the ground. "Police," the voice said, "do not move." Evelyn did not resist. She let them push her face into the carpet and zip-tie her wrists behind her back and search her apartment with the efficiency of people who knew exactly what they were looking for. "What is happening?" she demanded. "What is this about?" "We have a warrant," another voice said. Someone had turned on the lights, and Evelyn could see now that the men in her apartment were wearing suits, not uniforms. FBI, maybe, or state investigators. "You are being detained for questioning in connection with an ongoing investigation." Investigation into what? Harassment, stalking, making threats against the Lancaster family. They took her to an interrogation room downtown and left her there for 6 hours. When someone finally came in to question her, it was not the FBI agent she had expected. It was a lawyer, a Lancaster lawyer, based on the $5,000 suit and the smug expression. "Ms. Carter," the lawyer said, sitting down across from her. "You have been busy." "I want my attorney," Evelyn said. "Mr. Webb has been contacted. He is on his way. But while we wait, I thought we might have a chat." He opened a folder and spread photographs across the table. Pictures of Evelyn outside the hospital. Pictures of her at the coffee shop with Gloria. Pictures of her meeting with Claire. "Did you really think we would not notice?" the lawyer asked. "Did you really think you could skulk around our city, gathering your pathetic little evidence, without anyone paying attention?" Evelyn said nothing. "My clients have filed a restraining order against you. You are prohibited from coming within 500 feet of any member of the Lancaster family, including your former children." "They are my children, not according to the law." The lawyer smiled. "Your custody hearing has been canceled, by the way. The judge received some very concerning testimony about your mental state, stalking behavior, paranoid delusions, an unhealthy obsession with your ex-husband's family. He agreed that placing children in your care would be inappropriate. That is lies. All of it." "Is it?" The lawyer leaned forward. "We have witnesses, Miss Carter. People who saw you following Margaret through the shopping district. People who heard you making threats outside the Lancaster estate. People who are very concerned about your well-being. None of that happened. Prove it." Marcus Webb arrived an hour later and got her released. But the damage was done. The federal prosecutor had been reassigned to a different office. The grand jury presentation had been canceled. Diane Fletcher's editor had killed the story after a threatening phone call from a Lancaster-owned company. Every piece of the case Evelyn had built over 4 months had been dismantled in a single night. How did they find out? She asked Marcus in his car, her voice shaking with fury and despair. Someone talked, Marcus said grimly. I do not know who, but someone in our network gave them everything. Claire, I do not think so. She has as much to lose as you do, but someone. And now they know you are coming. What do we do? Marcus was silent for a long moment. We start over, he said finally. We rebuild. Different sources, different channels, copies stored in multiple locations. They think they have won, Evelyn. They think they have crushed you. We use that arrogance against them. And my children? The restraining order is temporary. We can fight it, but it will take time. How much time? I do not know. Evelyn stared out the window at the city passing by. The city where her children were waking up right now, being fed by strangers, learning to walk and talk without her. 6 months, she said quietly. You told me 6 months. I know. It has been 4. And now you are telling me it could be longer. I am sorry, Evelyn. I know this is not what you wanted to hear. Evelyn closed her eyes and breathed deeply. The old Evelyn would have cried, would have given up, would have accepted that some people were too powerful to fight. But the old Evelyn was dead. This Evelyn had lost everything, had it stolen from her while she lay bleeding in a hospital bed, had it taken again when she dared to fight back, and she was still standing. Then we start over, she said. Tonight, we rebuild everything they destroyed and we make it stronger this time. And when we are ready, when they think they are safe, we hit them so hard they never recover. Marcus looked at her with something like admiration. That is the spirit. The next 6 weeks were brutal. Evelyn had to rebuild everything from scratch. New sources, new documentation, new witnesses who were willing to risk everything to bring down the Lancasters. She worked 18-hour days, sleeping only when her body refused to continue. She lost weight she could not afford to lose. She developed dark circles under her eyes that no amount of makeup could hide. But she never stopped. Gloria Santos came through first. The nurses at Metropolitan General had been spooked by the failed first attempt. Several of them had withdrawn their willingness to testify, afraid of Lancaster retaliation. But Gloria was made of stronger stuff. I watched them take your babies, she told Evelyn at a late-night meeting. I watched that woman rip your wedding ring off while you were still bleeding. I am not going to let them get away with it. She organized the remaining witnesses herself, found secure ways to document evidence, created backup copies that were stored in multiple locations. By the end of week 2, they had more hospital fraud evidence than before. Diane Fletcher came through next. Her editor had killed the story, but Diane had not given up. She had taken her research to a national magazine that the Lancasters could not buy or threaten. The editor there was interested, very interested, but she needed more than financial documents. She needed a human face for the story. She needed Evelyn. I know you have been staying hidden, Diane said, but if you want this story to have maximum impact, you need to go public. People need to see who you are. They need to hear what happened to you. They need a hero to root for. Evelyn considered the risk. Going public meant losing her anonymity, losing her ability to move undetected, losing the element of surprise she had been counting on. But it also meant something else. It meant the Lancasters could not make her disappear quietly anymore. If something happened to her after she went public, everyone would know who was responsible. It was protection, in a way. The protection of attention. When? Evelyn asked. Diane smiled. I was hoping you would say that. Claire came through last. She had been lying low since the failed first attempt, afraid that the Lancasters would come after her next. But when Evelyn reached out, she did not hesitate. I have more recordings, Claire said. Garrett has been panicking since you surfaced. He is making mistakes, saying things he should not say. She handed over a phone loaded with new evidence. Recordings of Garrett admitting he knew about the Medicare fraud. Recordings of Margaret discussing how to destroy the witnesses who had spoken against them. Recordings of Richard bragging about the judge he had in his pocket. It was even more damning than before. Why are you still doing this? Evelyn asked. They could destroy you. Claire looked at her belly, now enormous, just weeks from delivery. I am doing this for her, she said, for both my daughters. I want them to grow up in a world where people like the Lancasters cannot hurt anyone anymore. The Lancaster Foundation. Annual gala was scheduled for the first Saturday in May. It was the social event of the season. Every donor, politician, and society figure in the city would be there. The press would be there. The cameras would be there. It was the perfect stage. Marcus obtained an invitation through one of his connections. The name on it was Helen Carter, Evelyn's mother. The woman who had built an empire in secret and left it to her daughter as a weapon. No one would connect that name to Evelyn Carter, discarded Lancaster ex-wife. The night before the gala, Evelyn stood in front of the mirror in her apartment and looked at the woman she had become. 6 months ago, she had been broken, gaslit into believing she was worthless, trembling and crying as she signed away her children. Now she was something else entirely. Her hair was different. Her posture was different. The way she held herself, the way she moved, the way she looked at the world with eyes that had stopped apologizing for existing. She was still scared, terrified, actually. Tomorrow she was going to walk into a room full of people who wanted her destroyed and try to burn their world to the ground. But fear and courage are not opposites. Courage is being afraid and doing it anyway. Evelyn Carter was ready. The Lancaster Foundation Gala was held in the grand ballroom of the Lancaster Hotel. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across a room designed to impress. String quartet in the corner. Champagne that cost more per bottle than most people made in a day. 400 guests in designer gowns and custom tuxedos, mingling and laughing and celebrating themselves. Evelyn arrived at 9 p.m., 1 hour after the event started. She was wearing a midnight blue dress that had cost $15,000. Her mother's money finally being used for its intended purpose. Her hair was styled differently than it had been during her years as a Lancaster wife. Her makeup emphasized her cheekbones and the determined set of her jaw. She looked like what she was. A billionaire, a warrior, a woman who had come to destroy an empire. The guests did not recognize her at first. She moved through this crowd like a ghost, accepting champagne from passing waiters, nodding politely at people who had no idea who she was. She was looking for one person, one face among the hundreds. She found Margaret Lancaster holding court near the stage. Margaret was 63 years old and had never looked more powerful. She was wearing a silver gown that probably cost more than most cars. Her diamonds caught the chandelier light and threw little rainbows across the shoulders of the men and women surrounding her. She was laughing at something a donor had said, the kind of gracious, practiced laugh that Margaret used when she wanted people to feel special. Evelyn approached slowly, savoring the moment. Margaret saw her first. The champagne glass in Margaret's hand stopped halfway to her lips. Her face went pale, then red, then a color that had no name but meant undiluted shock. Evelyn smiled. Good evening, Margaret. The guests nearby fell silent, sensing that something was happening. Heads turned. Conversations died. Margaret recovered quickly, her face smoothing into a mask of cold composure. Security, she said quietly to someone behind her. Remove this woman immediately. I would not do that if I were you, Evelyn said, her voice clear and carrying. Not unless you want these nice people to see you dragging a guest out of your own event. That would make quite a scene, would it not? Margaret's eyes narrowed. What do you want? I want to give you something. Consider it a donation. Evelyn reached into her clutch and pulled out a folder. She handed it to Margaret with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Open it. Margaret opened the folder. Her face went through several colors as she scanned the contents. Bank records showing the trail of embezzled funds. Transcripts of recordings that had never been destroyed. A letter from the FBI confirming that a grand jury had been convened. How did you? Margaret started. Your lawyers destroyed my first case, Evelyn said. They made a mistake. They thought that destroying the evidence would solve the problem. They forgot that crimes leave traces, multiple traces, redundant traces, traces that a determined person with unlimited resources can find again and again until the job is done. This proves nothing. It proves enough for a grand jury indictment, which was issued 4 hours ago. There are federal agents outside this building right now waiting for my signal. Garrett appeared at his mother's side, looking older and thinner than he had 6 months ago. The stress of waiting for the other shoe to drop had eaten away at his handsome facade. There were lines around his eyes that had not been there before, a nervous twitch in his jaw that betrayed his fear. "Evelyn," he said, "what is this about?" "Hello, Garrett." Evelyn's voice was ice. "You look terrible. This is harassment. I will have you arrested." "For what? Attending a public event? Making a donation to charity?" Evelyn shook her head slowly. "You really have not figured it out yet, have you? You spent so long thinking of me as weak and stupid that you never stopped to wonder if you might be wrong." She turned to address the crowd that had gathered around them. Donors, politicians, society figures, the people the Lancasters had spent decades cultivating and impressing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Evelyn said, her voice carrying across the ballroom, "I apologize for the interruption, but I thought you deserved to know exactly who you have been supporting all these years." She gestured to the folder still clutched in Margaret's trembling hands. "That folder contains evidence of Medicare fraud, tax evasion, charity embezzlement, and obstruction of justice. Crimes committed by the Lancaster family over the course of decades. Crimes that were covered up by bribed officials and intimidated witnesses. Crimes that you, through your generous donations, have unknowingly funded." "This is slander," Margaret spat. "Every word of it. Is it? Then you should have no problem with the federal investigation that is about to begin." Evelyn checked her watch. "In fact, it begins right about now." The ballroom doors opened. FBI agents entered in formation. The arrests happened in sequence. Richard Lancaster first. He tried to run and made it about 10 steps before agents tackled him to the ground. Margaret Lancaster next. She did not run. She stood perfectly still as they put handcuffs on her wrists, her face frozen in an expression of absolute disbelief. Vivian Lancaster after that. She screamed and cried and protested that she did not know anything, that it was all her parents' fault, that she was innocent. The agents did not care. And finally, Garrett. He stood there staring at Evelyn as the agent approached him with handcuffs. His blue eyes, which had once charmed her into giving up everything, were empty now. Hollow. Defeated. "You planned this," he said quietly. "All of it." "No," Evelyn replied. "You planned this 6 months ago when you handed me divorce papers in a hospital room. You just did not realize what you were starting." The agent cuffed him and began leading him away. "But Evelyn," Garrett called over his shoulder, "I am sorry for all of it. I was weak. I know that does not matter now, but—" "You are right," she said. "It does not." She watched him disappear through the ballroom doors. She did not feel satisfaction exactly, just a quiet certainty that justice was finally being done. But the night was not over yet. 3 hours after the arrests, Evelyn received a phone call from Marcus Webb. "There is a problem," he said. "The children are not at the Lancaster estate." "What do you mean?" Margaret anticipated this. She sent them somewhere before the gala. The nanny claims she does not know where. "We are searching, but—" "My children are missing?" Evelyn felt her blood turn to ice. She had won. She had destroyed the Lancasters, exposed their crimes, watched them being led away in handcuffs. But her children were gone. She went to the jail where Garrett was being held. He looked broken now. Orange jumpsuit, handcuffs, and all the Lancaster wealth and privilege stripped away in a single night. "Where are they, Garrett? Why should I help you?" "Because they are your children too. Whatever you feel about me, you cannot hate them." For a long moment, he was silent. Then, quietly, "Vermont, the vacation house on Lake Champlain. My mother sent them there with her sister. She was planning to take them out of the country tomorrow." He gave her the address. Evelyn turned to leave. "Evelyn," Garrett called after her, "I really am sorry. I know you do not believe me, but I am." She paused at the door. "You are right," she said. "I do not believe you." She walked out without looking back. Vermont was 4 hours away by car. Evelyn made it in 3. The vacation house sat on the edge of Lake Champlain, surrounded by trees that were just beginning to show their fall colors. It looked peaceful, idyllic. Nothing like the prison where her children had been held for 6 months. She arrived at 4 in the morning with federal agents and a family court judge who had signed emergency custody papers at midnight. Margaret's sister opened the door in her bathrobe. "You cannot be here," she said immediately. "Margaret told me." "Margaret is in federal custody," Evelyn interrupted. "These are court orders." "Where are my children?" 3 cribs in a back bedroom. 3 babies, 6 months old now, sleeping peacefully in the pre-dawn darkness. Evelyn approached slowly, her heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Emma was in the first crib, dark hair like Evelyn's, long eyelashes resting against the chubby cheeks. Sophia was in the second, lighter coloring, more like Garrett, a stuffed rabbit clutched in her tiny fist. James was in the third, the smallest of the three, sleeping with his arms stretched above his head. Evelyn reached down and picked up Emma first. The baby stirred, opened her eyes, looked at the face hovering above her, and smiled. "Hello, beautiful," Evelyn whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hello, my sweet girl. Mama is here. Mama is finally here." She picked up Sophia next, then James. Three babies cradled against her chest, three heartbeats against her own. For 6 months she had dreamed of this moment. For 6 months she had fought and planned and sacrificed for this exact instant. And now it was real. "I am never leaving you again," she promised them. "Never. No matter what happens, no matter what anyone tries to do, I will always be here. I will always protect you. I will always love you." The trial took place 4 months later. It was a media sensation. The downfall of one of the oldest and wealthiest families on the eastern seaboard. The woman who had been thrown away like garbage and came back to destroy an empire. Every major news outlet covered it. Every talk show discussed it. Every social media platform was flooded with opinions and debates and hot takes. Evelyn did not care about any of that. She just wanted justice. The testimonies were devastating. Gloria Santos took the stand and described what she had witnessed in the hospital room. The divorce papers thrown on a bleeding woman's chest. The babies taken away before their mother could hold them. The cruelty that had made her question her faith in humanity. "I have been a nurse for 30 years, Gloria said. "I thought I had seen everything. I was wrong." Claire Ashford testified about her relationship with Garrett, the promises he had made, the lies he had told, the way he had discarded her the moment she became inconvenient. "He told me he loved me," Claire said. "What he meant was that I was useful. There is a difference." Diane Fletcher presented the evidence she had gathered over years of investigation, the financial records, the bribes, the corruption that had protected the Lancasters for decades. "This family operated above the law for generations," Diane said. "They thought they were untouchable. They were wrong. The verdicts were unanimous. Richard Lancaster, guilty on all counts, 22 years in federal prison. Margaret Lancaster, guilty on all counts, 28 years in federal prison. She was 63 years old. She would die behind bars. Garrett Lancaster, guilty on all counts, 18 years in federal prison. Vivian Lancaster, guilty on conspiracy and obstruction charges, 7 years in federal prison. The prenuptial agreement was voided based on evidence of fraud and criminal conspiracy. Evelyn's parental rights were fully restored. Full custody of all three children was awarded to her without restriction. The Lancaster family was finished. 5 years later, summer evening, a beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood, far from the city where all of it had happened. Three children played in the backyard while their mother watched from the porch. Emma was 5 now, protective and thoughtful, always watching over her siblings. She had Evelyn's dark hair and Garrett's blue eyes, but her spirit was entirely her own. Sophia was the artist of the family, constantly drawing pictures and making up stories. She saw beauty in everything and everyone. James was the adventurer, fearless and curious, always climbing things he should not climb and asking questions no one could answer. They were healthy, they were happy, they were loved. David Parker sat beside Evelyn on the porch swing, holding her hand. They had met 2 years ago at a foundation event. David was a pediatrician with a gentle manner and a good heart. He loved Evelyn for who she was, not what she had. He loved her children like they were his own. They were engaged. The wedding was planned for next spring. "You are thinking about it again," David said. "I can always tell. Sometimes it feels like a dream," Evelyn admitted. "Like I will wake up and still be in that hospital room signing those papers. You are not there anymore. I know. It is just hard to believe sometimes." "How much everything has changed," David squeezed her hand. "You changed it. You fought when anyone else would have given up. You survived when anyone else would have broken. You built this life, Evelyn, all of it, and no one can ever take it away from you again." The children came running toward the porch, sweaty and grass-stained and perfect. Mama, Emma said, throwing herself into Evelyn's arms. Can we have ice cream? It is almost dinner time, please. All three children spoke in unison, their faces arranged in identical expressions of hope. Evelyn laughed. The sound still surprised her sometimes. How easily it came now. How natural it felt. One scoop each, she said. But do not tell David. I am right here, David protested. I can hear you. One scoop is basically healthy. The children cheered and ran toward the kitchen. David shook his head in mock exasperation and followed them. Evelyn stayed on the porch for a moment, looking out at the yard where her children had been playing. That night, she tucked the triplets into bed. Emma had a question. Mama, why do we not see Grandma Margaret? Evelyn paused. She had known this question would come eventually. She had prepared for it many times. Grandma Margaret made some very bad choices, she said carefully. She hurt a lot of people. Now she has to spend time thinking about those choices. Was she mean to you? Yes, sweetheart. She was very mean. But you are okay now? Evelyn leaned down and kissed her daughter's forehead. I am more than okay. I have you. I have Sophia and James. I have David. I have everything I ever wanted. That makes me the luckiest person in the whole world. I love you, Mama. I love you too, baby girl. More than anything, she tucked in Sophia and James, then stood in the doorway and looked at her children one last time. Safe. Loved. Home. Later that night, Evelyn stood at the window of her bedroom, looking out at the stars. She thought about her mother, about Helen Carter, who had built a secret empire and left it as a weapon for her daughter to use, who had seen danger coming and prepared for it, even knowing she would not live to see the outcome. Thank you, Mom, Evelyn whispered. I finally understand. She thought about the woman she had been 6 years ago, young and naive and desperately in love with a man who had never existed. The woman who had signed a prenuptial agreement without reading it. The woman who had given up her career and her friends and her identity because she believed love would be enough. That woman was gone now, replaced by someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who knew that love was important, but so was self-respect. So was standing up for yourself. So was remembering who you were no matter what anyone else tried to make you believe. She thought about Garrett rotting in a federal prison somewhere, about Margaret dying slowly behind bars, about the empire they had built on cruelty and crime, now reduced to rubble and cautionary tales. They had tried to break her. They had taken everything she had and thrown her away like garbage. They had failed. The final thought that crossed Evelyn's mind before she went to sleep that night was not about revenge or justice or the $1 billion that had changed her life. It was about her mother. Helen Carter had been right about everything, about the Lancasters, about the danger they represented, about the need to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. But she had also been right about something else. Something she had told Evelyn when she was just a little girl, long before money or marriages or children complicated everything. You are going to be somebody, baby girl, Helen had said. Those people, they have money, but money does not make you smart or kind or strong. You have things inside you that no amount of money can buy, and one day you are going to show them all. Evelyn had shown them. She had shown everyone. And now, finally, after everything she had been through, she could rest. Not because the fight was over, but because she had won.